Morgan.
Yes.
So I heard a rumor that you were working on some intro music for us because you
Oh.
can't stand my singing in the back room Confirm or deny?
Can confirm. Hello, everyone. Welcome on this Thursday. It is actually really funny since we have a podcast. There's 122 episodes as of today on the podcast. One of these days, we'll bring over the music to the live shows. But for now, I think it'll just be us. So,
Sorry in
Nick,
advance.
there's some big conferences coming up. There's Inbound, there's SaaStr, there's Dreamforce, and also there's probably some local networking group that is hosting something in your city this fall. So who'd we bring on? Why? This event is to help us all do better in-person networking. And I feel like we brought on a couple of stars for this discussion.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna really go and like knock off the rust of like now you have to travel to go back like in person, and do you shake hands? Do you like elbow, fist bump? Like what do you do? But I feel like today all those questions are going to be answered. Plus, I heard some really brilliant networking tips in the back room, and I think you guys are in for a good session.
In for a treat. All right. Well, welcome to the stage, David and Tara. Yay. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome. Thanks for being here. Yeah. So, question of the day. We like to kick it off with something fun and lighthearted, but today might be an anxiety-inducing question related to our theme. What's the one networking question that just makes you want to walk away?
That is these are good questions. And probably, I think the one for me, it just depends on how you end up saying it. But when people always come out first and say, hey, let's find ways to see if we have any type of synergy, it's a good question, but if you just go for it straightforward, it's kind of a turnoff a little bit. It's like, okay, let's build a little bit more rapport instead of just kind of that snake move where not a snake move, but they come in too quick. But yeah, I'd probably say that would be one of those for me.
Oh, that's great.
I would say my answer is similar, but I remember being at a conference and somebody, saying like, hey, what's your 30-second, 60-second pitch? And I do my best to deliver what I think was okay, right? Or hopefully great. And they're like, say it again. And it was so awkward because I'm like, I butchered it. Did they not understand? And then they literally said it for the third time. So now I'm just like straight panic, being like, what did I just say? I want to get out of this situation. And they just thought it was funny to tell me to pitch like 3 times in a row. And it just came off so, I don't know, not genuine or really friendly or even helpful. Because then he's like, just kidding. Like there was no, like, oh, I was trying to understand the second half of your pitch. Or, oh, that really makes sense to my business. There was no reason for it. And it's like, there's a lot of people that go to conferences that this isn't their cup of tea, right? But you have to go do this. This is part of being the go-to-market team. So that for me is making someone pitch just to pitch is very uncomfortable.
No kidding.
That's really weird. If you're here, drop a high in comments and maybe drop your favorite, least favorite networking question. We'd love to see it. I feel like this might be a hot take, but my least favorite question to lead with in a conversation is what I've affectionately learned is the parrot question. Because everybody goes around and parrots this question. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And you just hear it over and over and over again. And after a while, I'm like, do I really need to recycle? Like, it's fine to have an elevator pitch, and it's actually great to ask somebody what they do. I always found it as like a lackluster way to start a conversation. A mentor of mine always sidesteps it, and he says, well, I do a lot of things. What do you want to know about? And then if they press and they say, well, what do you do for work? He's like, nah, that's not interesting. Do you have kids? Just like launches into something else, which I always admired.
That's too funny.
I think the one that always got me was like the original pitch slap, where somebody would walk up to you and they would just like verbal diarrhea everything that they do to you, and you're like, hi. Or my second favorite is they just hand you a business card and I'd be like, just hand it back. No, it's okay. I deal with people.
Oh yeah, somebody walks up with just like the
drive-by business carding, and you're like, why did you come to a networking event if you weren't going to go and talk?
Have you ever done that, though, is the question. Has someone ever handed you a business card with that type, and you've actually been like,
yeah, no, thank you.
No, thanks.
Yeah.
Respect, of course.
I was in the middle of a conversation and somebody just walked up to me, interrupted my conversation, actually stuck their business card right in front of my face.
Oh my God.
And said, you should call me. And I was like, you should learn manners. Have a nice day.
Goodness.
But I think it's just when you go to so many networking events, it's like social selling. It's like anything else. If nobody's taught you what's acceptable, what's right, and what works, what actually works, I think a lot of people just build really bad habits. And I don't think it's that they're trying to be selfish. I think they honestly just don't know better. Because I noticed that a lot in networking events around Calgary is that people would just do really silly things. And I know everybody around the table like, who raised them? Who taught them to do that? Why would they do that? And I was like, I actually just don't think they know better, because maybe it's their first time networking, or maybe they're working for a company or a group of companies that are pushing them to do like direct sales, and just never taught them the right flow to have a conversation in a business setting. I think that's the biggest problem, is nobody talks about that. And I'm excited to talk about that today.
Yes. So just to kick this off, and I think this will be one of those we just punt to whoever wants to go first and we can just continue this conversation. What is, maybe we start with preparation. So you're going to inbound, you're going to SaaStr or Dreamforce or any one of these things. How much time are you putting into prep for and what are you doing to prep for these events when you're going in person? Because I feel like there's so many things to do, and we're at SaaStr. I think Tara, you're at Inbound, right? David, I think you're at all three of them. What should people be doing to prepare for in-person networking?
Tara, you wanted to defer to me, or do you want me to start? Want me to kick us off?
You can kick us off. I'm interested to see what you're going to say.
No, for sure.
You're a big prepper, so I know.
I am. I've said this a few times in my posts, but, my grandfather was someone that, was not only my best friend, but someone that really taught me so much about David, preparation meets opportunity, right? You have one chance. I mean, I'm not going to go M&M on anyone right now, but you have that one shot at an opportunity. Think about how much money is being invested on these events. Think about the ROI that an individual is holding. So I'm thinking airfare. They're there for 3 nights. That's hotel, that's food, that's drinks. Not saying that an individual is a pawn, but if you really think about it on a business level, like in this world of business, you have a certain dollar amount tied to you. And if you're not holding yourself accountable to not just break even on what they spent for you to be able to go and have your seat here, you need to be able to show the ROI. So preparation is absolutely key to everything. And so the very first thing, and I don't know if a lot of people probably already know how to do this, and it's very, very simple. The first thing that I do on a day-to-day basis is I end up going to LinkedIn. If you see my phone right now, I have my code up, my QR code. Because think, if you end up having a casual conversation, even at an airport, or even just basic networking, where you can end up going up to someone and just like have a 3-minute conversation, and then they have to end up leaving. Hey, like let's connect on LinkedIn. Boom, already a connection. You can have a 3-minute conversation with someone, have your QR code. So set it. There's 2 settings. Like I obviously do it to the lock screen, so it's an easy way to be able to connect with people. And then 2, I focus probably 2 or 3 hours. It sounds insane, but I legitimately visualize exactly where everybody is on the map that's attending. So I'm starting where the sponsors are. So if I'm an account executive, I'm going to be there. I am tiering out my accounts, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Once I end up tiering those 3 accounts, I'm like, okay, is there going to be someone there that is going to be speaking? And if so, do you want to attend? And if so, are you taking notes specifically of the buzzwords or things that they're passionate about? Because if you hear those things that they're passionate about, you can later be able to seeing them and be able to like hit a nice little buzzword. It's the like right now, like the visualization process. It's like you are setting yourself up to be very successful. And then obviously another just key feature is just like clicking the bell on all of your tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 people that you want to end up speaking to. So once you visualize, I never step into a room where I do not know what's in front of me, behind me, left, and to my right. Always. Every single point. I know where the competitors are. So for example, because I was in the gifting space, I know exactly where Reach Desk is. I know where Sendoso is on the map, right? I know all the key players within my ICP. I know where they are. And now where are the booths that I'm going to be going to? Because if you get distracted, it's like prize wheel over here, prize here. Oh, get this here. If you don't stay focused, it's a lot of fun to go to these events. If you do not stay focused, there's going to be a big problem. You're going to have tough conversations when you get back from these conferences because there's so much money being invested.
That's awesome. How about you, Tara? How do you prep?
Yeah, so well, you're talking to a marketer, so so I'll keep this to the network.
We finally have another marketer on this call.
I'll keep this to the networking end and not the prepping of the event, right? But we really do it as a team sport, right? So everybody going knows that they have their own individual responsibility and expectations. And of course, marketing takes care of, some of the pre-invites, pre-promos, all of that. But every single person that goes to one of our events knows that they need to be doing their own level of personal outreach. And when I say personal, I actually mean manual outreach. It's either a phone call, an email, or a LinkedIn message. So you can divide that however you want. If you're in sales or you're in marketing, kind of like David said, make sure you understand who's going. Look at the app. Our team has figured out ways to hack most conference apps to pull down the attendee list if you don't buy it. So there's a lot of pre-conference hacks you can do to make sure you know who's going to be there. And then filter. David's
like pulling out his notepad.
He's like, message right now. Yeah. So, and then we check in about it before, like inbound. We're now under a week, and we talk about what's been working for me, what's been working for someone else, and sending that individual message. And for us, it's super important that the person at the end of the message understands it's actually personal. So it's not a mass email. And we don't have to go into like how to make it personal, but they can understand from the way that you're approaching the written word that it's really meant for them, and figuring out how you could possibly meet up, or just mentioning something like David said that they care about, or a session. If it's me trying to connect with another marketing leader, talking about what I'm excited for. So that's a lot of our kind of pre-prepping, is knowing exactly who we want to as like our own targets, and trying to get those, either meetings facilitated, or where they're going to be, or spending their time, or grabbing a coffee. So then when you get there, even if they didn't respond or you didn't have it set up, they might remember that, like, hey, oh yeah, you sent me that message on LinkedIn. Okay, great. And then the conversation was already like pre-prepped. To me, it's kind of like prospecting, right? From an outbound perspective. But absolutely, you're already behind if you didn't do personal outreaches before you like appear at an event. So
absolutely, they shouldn't be hearing your name for the first time when you step up right in front of them, or else that just never makes for as good of a conversation.
I also
100%.
like the team sport perspective too, especially for events of these size. Like
yes.
what I think about like tiering out. So Denver Startup Week is at the end of the month, and it's like this insane it's technically not Techstars Startup Week, and I think it's technically the largest entrepreneurial gathering in North America. It's insane, and I always think about that versus like one of the meetups that happens on the way up to Denver Startup Week, and it's just like it's a fraction of the people, and so like doing the smaller events is a different sort of motion than doing these really big events. And I love how you're articulating like it's not just on each individual person to try and figure out the whole big event. It's a team sport, and we're supposed to be prospecting together and building relationships together, since across the entire like go to market team, that's how we win at these big events.
Absolutely.
I think that's great. And maybe to like piggyback and ask you a question there, Tara, is like, how do you and the sales team really align, right before an event, right? Like, how does that, you're obviously the sales team's going to go in one direction, marketing in another. Like, are you texting, keeping people in the loop, or things being transferred and obviously into your CRM once it ends up scanning? That's pretty basic, but like, what are some like tips that maybe some tips along with how you're aligned as well with your team internally?
Yeah. So we set our like high level marketing and like sales expectations and goal of the whole event. So obviously those are like leads, demos, deals, even like ARR together. And then there's like marketing expectations of all of kind of the back end, right? But once we're there, our main goal is making sure that our brand is reaching every single person we possibly can. So we divide and conquer. So we won't have all staff at the booth at the same time. We'll say, okay, it's, Tara and Madison's turn. They're going into the sessions. They're mingling. They're walking around the conference area. And if we do it really well, the second day or later on, they're like, oh, I talked to your colleague. Oh, I saw them. And our goal is to stand out so people know that Get Accept is there. Number one, to be memorable. And so we constantly check back in on who we talk to. We set day goals of meetings booked of people that are like super high interested, of course. And everything else will go through the app. And so we all have access to the app and the admin and the notes. So I can see in real time exactly who people talk to, what they talked about. And then we kind of like huddle every couple hours constantly. So we do set up Slack channels, though, to answer your question, or WhatsApp or anything that makes the most sense. But we organize it. So we have a specific one we just set it up, inbound pictures and promo. So anyone attending, they know that they're responsible for taking pictures and video and sending that back to our marketing team to utilize. And so it doesn't get all cluttered. So then there'll be another Slack channel about leads and conversations. So it's like a very well-oiled machine. I think you can't over prep is my take on that.
Yeah.
Nope.
Love that.
Denver's like taking notes. He's ready.
Yeah. I mean, it's just really cool being able to see it from two perspectives, right? Like being an SDR leader, being, in the past an SDR, an account executive, kind of been in every seat, but I haven't been more so on the marketing side. I mean, sometimes with different trade shows, I've been able to like invite folks and all of that, but it's like, this is really cool being able to see the marketing perspective and especially right before the three largest events of the year. So this is great. I'm taking lots of notes.
So a question then for all of us, I suppose. You've done your prep work. You've got your targets. You got your list for the day. You've got the metrics that you need to hit. What are the most common things people shouldn't be doing when they're kickstarting a conversation, or when they're like, obviously you're going to have just by numbers, some chunk of people you've already prepped outreach to, and then some chunk of people are just going to be brand new. So in either or one of the scenarios, like what are some of the things that we should be avoiding, like, and staying away from when we kickstart those conversations with people?
Is this one for me?
Sure.
Do
Go
it.
for it.
So, the things to avoid, I mean, I think a lot of the times individuals feel comfortable staying with their certain cliques, right? Like there's certain groups and they walk around together. So, one of the things I would avoid is if you feel comfortable, and I think you can get a lot done during the day. If you feel comfortable going solo, if you're more so an individual contributor, it just kind of depends on what role you're in. Going solo and really trying to be able to, you know, hit your plan of attack. Like, yes, like being able to stay focused. But I think overall, it's staying focused on eye on the prize. Like, there's going to be parties, there's going to be different events, and you got to think about every single thing of the conference as an opportunity to not only build top of funnel, but being able to build organic relationships. So I'm not exactly sure if I answered the question, but overall, I think going solo is, and maybe having like one other buddy that you might go with, maybe from a different organization, so you can like really work with them where you're like, hey, I'm going to go this way. Maybe there's like an opportunity where you can like trade leads and make introductions. Like there's so many different plays. Just really depends, but going solo definitely will help you stay focused.
That's such a good one. How many people go and stick with their clique and they meet the same people from conference to conference from conference, and they're actually not getting to know anyone new? That's such a good trap to avoid. Well said.
Tara?
All right. Yeah. So my take on avoiding, I guess, certain things is being selfish. So we all have goals, right? We all have our plan of attack, but you need to realize you're there to make connections with people first and foremost as a human and not the business. You have to like bring value to that conversation and care about them and who they are and what they do and their role and their challenges and maybe their career or some human connection that you can make, because they're going to remember that versus you just pitching your business and just to hear them out. That's not really going to go anywhere. And understanding like what makes people tick or what's important to them, what they think success is, or challenges that they're having. It's like a discovery call, right? It's not about me, it's about you, and asking the right questions and really feeling engaged. And I see a lot of people networking and they just, like, to your point, it's like, what do you do? What company are you from? And it's like, there's so many other questions you could ask that are more interesting that would eventually lead you there. Even just like, what are you hoping to get out of this conference from the session content? Something that's just like a little bit more detailed, and you'll learn about them right away because you'll understand which session content that they're going to go to that they care about. Because usually you're going to relate it to your job, right?
Or yeah, did you attend that panel with whoever? Like that was amazing. And
yeah, because it's real.
Because it's real.
It's a real conversation versus just this like anecdotal. Where are you from? Oh, how does your tech work? And it's like you don't get anywhere in those conversations. It's like we all have to challenge ourselves to think more creatively, I think, especially in the really big conferences.
That's such a great point. Like, come in with 2, 3, even as many as 5 like go-to questions that are kind of outside that realm of what do you do? And just because we get nervous, so give yourself a fallback plan of something to go and ask. That's great. Yeah, and especially if you're like right near the stage, that's an easy one.
Yeah, I also love how you frame that as not being selfish. Because it is, I find myself falling into that trap. And I think I was going to articulate something similar to that, which was like, step out of it's important to have a plan of attack, but I think one of the mistakes that I've made previously, so earned wisdom here, is not taking advantage of the 20% of time where you can sort of relax that plan of attack and get to know people outside the bubble, even if it's just a good relationship that isn't related to your ICP, or it's somebody who's interesting that you have a good conversation with. Like some of my longest term business partners, we never did business together. We just have a professional relationship. They are from a very different industry, but we have great conversations and we have a meaningful time together because we stopped being selfish, and we also stepped outside of just like, okay, yeah, I have work to do, and I'm also giving myself permission to have more meaningful relationships with people who maybe don't fit my ICP. I mean, there's going to be so many people at all these events, and there's going to be so many cool people at all these events. Might as well take advantage of that space of being in person to build something meaningful.
100%. And to piggyback off like some of the icebreakers, I think so very important to build those organic relationships, even like you said, Morgan, outside your ICP, right? Like really genuinely care about people. Like, yes, it's important to have a plan of attack, but like those icebreaker questions, right? Like, once again, Tara, you mentioned this, like what really motivated you to come to the event? Or, you know, where did you fly in from? Right? Or how was your flight? You know, and being able to try to create organic value of being like, oh, like that's really cool. Like I've heard of you. Like if you're staying prepped, and the reason I stay prepped is knowing that if the people are going to be there and I can build organic relationships with them, I can also be able to say, hey, I really like what X, Y, and Z company does. I think what you do is great. So not only you're building the organic, like you're understanding what they do a little bit, and you're talking to them as a regular person. In the middle side of the brain, right, is now you're just building the mix between, yes, I like you, like overall, like, you know what I do, I think it's cool. I had a really turbulent time, like flying from Houston to Boston. Like, let me tell you, I sat next to Del Griffith's brother on the flight. If anyone knows planes, trains, and automobiles, but you're able to really just have that casual conversation. So it's a mix between preparation meets opportunity. Back to what my grandfather's always told me.
Mm-hmm.
Like Adam's comment here. Each networking event should have name tags with your name, your company, and your function role, not your title. And then you can ask higher level value added questions. I've wondered actually that from like a marketing standpoint. If you were running an event, I've always thought of like, what would be a good way to get people talking?
Yeah. You need like more creative information on the tags, like put something most people don't know about you. Or it's like you almost put the icebreakers on there for people, because networking is hard. Like as I was listening to all of you, I'm like, this isn't easy, because everyone defaults to the question, like the common questions that we know don't really go anywhere. Like I've done it a million times too, you know? So it's anything that's like different, that stands out, that's memorable and more personal. So yeah, to the marketers of the world, we need to step up who's listening on these badges. At least the profile on the apps have gotten a lot better with like interests and the icebreakers that way. But, you know, we're still doing the good old fashioned badges. So, yeah.
I saw somebody that did color coded badges one time. They did it here. It was red, yellow, green. And it was, I don't know why somebody would go to a networking event wearing red, but like it was just don't talk to me. I don't want to talk. Yellow was like, I don't mind talking to a few people. And green was like, come talk to me. I want to talk to everyone. And it was super interesting how that changed the conversation, because like people would just beeline to people that were wearing green and just go have conversations.
And no one talked to the red.
Yeah.
It was just, it definitely piqued my curiosity of like,
they're just there for the food and booze. That's why.
Yeah.
blink if somebody has you here, like,
are you a hostage?
Are you safe?
Yeah. Blink 3 times if you're okay. One other thing I think about is like, how do you, I sort of want to skip some of the meat, because I think we'll come back to some of the meat. I just want to get on a tail end. So at the end of the day, full disclosure, I'm a total introvert. I can turn on personality and like charisma, and it'll be a great time to be in person. But I often am exhausted by the end of the day talking with a lot of people. And I think that's, whether you're extroverted or introverted or somewhere in between, I think that's a fairly common experience at these large events, not just because there's a lot of people to meet and talk to, but it's also all of the stimulation, and it's all of the content and the prize wheels and everything else that your brain is just absorbing. So at the end of the day, uh, in a literal sense, how are you sort of measuring your success, looking back on the day, saying, like, reflecting on it, and then how are you recharging for the next day? Like, how are you uh, continuing the momentum through a multi-day conference so you don't burn out on day 2?
Yeah, I mean, it's really thinking about, like thinking about like the SMART goals, right? Like really trying to make sure that it's going to be, more so actionable, right? Like specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and then time bound. I mean, anyone, really has those goals, but as you said, I mean, there's that time where you just need to decompress. Like I'm an individual that, believe it or not, I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert. Like I can turn it on, but also like to recharge and recenter by, you know, going on a walk or, talking with my children. Like I'm actually a lot calmer than people might think. Um, but like, I go back to like the different type of goals, like whatever strategy that the organization, is going with, like make sure like, hey, are we here to generate, X amount of MQLs, is the goals, recruiting different type of channel partners or recruiting new employees or, achieving ROI at a certain percentage. I mean, there's so many different type of, ways to measure success. So it just really depends on like the go-to-market strategy of the event and, how companies are going to, how the sales and marketing teams working together, customer success team, the events team. I mean, there's just so much that's going on. And I think alignment is key, but at the end of the day, I just, journal like what the wins, like what some of the big wins are for the day for myself. And then things that I wish I would have done, like take an additional risk or asked a certain question when someone was speaking. Like there's a lot of people up there. Like I call it the 3-second rule. So like if you don't do it within 3 seconds, once it's your thought, like you got to be calm about it. But if you don't do it in 3 seconds, more than likely you're not going to do it. So if you want to go talk with a group, like tap into your EQ or like be like, all right, think about it as we're kids, like sitting at trying to sit next to a new person at the lunch table in the snack bar. Like if we bring out our inner children, like how do you start those new conversations if you're the new kid at the school? Like, do they have some super sick kicks? Like, are those like new MJs, Kobe's? Like, is there something that they're wearing that you can identify with? Do they have a super sick watch? Like, paying attention to those details will really be able to help kickstart some of those conversations. So it's like, So like, I think I answered the question, but I mean, more so, think downtime at the end of it is making sure that you feel well mentally and so that you're ready to recharge for the next day.
I had a mentor that actually taught me something very similar to that, David. It was plan your play and rest. So when we were doing road trips, he said, plan your play, plan a way to get out of work even while you're on a road trip. And so people love to go and have, like, we used to call it the race of commonality when we were networking. You'd find something that they'd lean in and get excited about. It's like the easiest thing is to go play. So find a way to go play while you're out and about. So whether it's there's a ping pong table and you love ping pong, or like go there, but plan that as part of your activities because it'll recharge your batteries so you can go back. And he said, don't just wait till the end of the day either. Plan it in the middle of the day, like going for a walk in the middle of your work day. And I thought that was the greatest advice because then now you're not stressed, you're not frustrated. And then he said also to plan your way out, like plan your rest. So like if you know that by 5 o'clock you are done, go plan to be out of there. Go and plan a nice dinner for yourself. Enjoy it. Celebrate that you were there all day and you did what you needed to do, right? And I just thought it was the greatest advice. It's like, yeah, like I can celebrate that I did what I was supposed to do. I go and plan in fun so that I get to meet people doing things that I enjoy too. And then it's a win-win because nobody, when you're sitting there playing ping pong or playing something, nobody goes, what do you do? What do you do? It just doesn't come up until after when they're actually interested. Hey, so tell me about yourself. It just changes the whole tone.
Love that.
I love that as well. And also maybe stepping outside to go to a different bar, like maybe away from other people, and just try to strike up another just casual conversation. Don't talk about business, and just it's a good reset to just learn to like, all right, once you get back into the arena, like I call it, once you get back on stage, it's just a nice one, you get a reset, but two, just go sit up to someone at a bar that you normally wouldn't sit next to, maybe in, someone in their late 60s, or someone that just you normally might not sit next to, and just ask them about their day. Like, no strings attached. Like, how's your day going? Like, right. And that'll just get you back in the mind for like the headspace of being like, okay, like I had this casual conversation. Let me just be that. Like, don't be that snake or someone that is looking, to almost like, you know what I mean? Like you see the people at the conferences wheeling and dealing. And yes, like that's important, but you have to be really smart and strategic about it.
Look at that car extended warranty thing.
I've been trying to reach you about your extended warranty. I love those calls because I own a used 1999 Toyota. So there is no way there's an extended warranty on that vehicle. And I also purchased it used. So it's always, anyway, sorry, that's a tangent. Tara, how do you like to continue the momentum and also recharge, through these longer multi-day events?
Yeah. So typically I recharge by looking at my notes. So for me, I need a lot of notes in order to have action items after the conference. So I look to see what I accomplished. I'm proud of that, whether it's good, bad, in the middle, because you were still there, you're still putting in the work and trying to be very positive about it. And then that helps you the next day, right? Or you need to improve or focus. And then for me, it's getting outside, like in the fresh air, whether it's walking, running, even like 5 minutes before that, like before a session, before you start your day. If you don't have time to do like a full workout, if you work out or anything like that, it's like always plan extra time to give yourself breaks, because these conferences go by so fast. There's so much there. So you have to like protect your personal space. And just to add, I'm also not an extrovert by nature. I'm more introverted and can turn it on. So I just thought that was funny that David and Morgan said that. So I protect my personal space because I need it, honestly.
Like, I would have never guessed that about you, Tara. Like, you're, from even having you on the show, a month ago, us just having that casual, like that was a perfect example. Like it was almost like we knew each other from the get-go. And I think having that type of organic conversation really is like, I think how networking and business should be done. Like, I don't know your take on that. I don't know like what your first impression of me was.
Let's get into it.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah, it's something that if you knew me when I was younger, I was actually super shy. My parents think it's kind of funny what I do. They're like, you speak in front of all these people all the time. I'm like, yeah. But it's also something because I'm like passionate about it. It's very easy for me. I'm passionate about the business world and marketing and SaaS. So I'm like super interested in going and meeting those people. If you put me in a room of something that I, don't really care about, like a car, type of conference, I really have nothing to say. That's not like really my area of expertise, and I would be very uncomfortable in that setting. So, yeah.
What do you guys think of this for the new opener?
I like it. Hi,
I'm Win-Loss Jordan. What do you do?
That's good.
That's so funny.
I like that one, man. That's good.
Is the hi, I'm product offering name. How are you? Is the formula? I don't know what I would do if someone said that to me.
I have no idea.
I'd probably stand there like with my head cocked and looking at them like.
So we did bring up, I want to circle back to some icebreakers because I feel like I feel for everyone, and I don't want to generalize too hard, that like when you actually get into a good conversation, it's really easy to maintain that conversation because, as David has said so many times today, it's organic. You're talking about multiple different things. You're paying attention to multiple different things. So what are some go-to icebreakers y'all like that can open up that sort of conversation?
Do we want to go and like pump the brakes a bit and just kind of go a little bit back of like even what to look for? Because I think that a lot of people
Sure.
don't know what to look for either. Like we used to call it the race to commonality. And you could always tell when you hit on something that was good because the person would lean in. They would, they'd speak up. They'd be louder. They would speak faster. They'd ask you questions. You could see like they would smile or they'd have very lively facial expressions. But when they're not and they're talking really slow or giving you the one word answers or they're looking for the exit or like, but you got to, I think, you got to really watch their body language and then pay attention to how it changes as you're running through your questions. So what is your guys' what? I don't know why, but David, I feel like you have some good ones. what are your go-to questions?
What do you look for? Yeah.
My answers might be a little bit different, but it's I pay very, very, very close attention to body language. I look at if I'm in a conversation and someone does one of these where they're having a conversation and they quickly like peek at their phone. It might be like it's time to wrap it up. Like it's nice meeting, like scan, like try to have a conversation. But if someone's really interested, you're having the conversation. It's like it's back to the tunnel vision. Like you feel like the synergy, and there has to be a point where you do have to cut off the conversation just because there's so many things going on and you have to like try to get the most out of your day. And if you just have this hour conversation with someone, that probably is not the best time, like best way to spend your time. But it's having that good conversation. Try to figure out like, maybe a little bit later, like what party are they going to be attending? And if you're in the same like ICP, right? Like I'm thinking about, for example, like what about like the Chili Piper event, right? So there's a few Chili Piper events coming up. So sponsors like Google, LinkedIn, ClickUp, On24, PandaDoc, I think that there's a few others. Like what communities are going to be going to some of these events? And so like if you have a good conversation with someone, try to figure out maybe what party they're going to and like say, hey, that's really cool. Like what, what's going on at that party? Like really try to continue to build interest, because if you want to connect with them later, if they're tier 1 account or someone that's specifically that you enjoyed having a conversation with, like try to find those events and be able to meet up with them a little bit later. But it's paying close attention to small cues, such as looking at your phone or them kind of just like looking around, like what, you know what I'm saying? Like there's just those small little things that you have to really observe as you're having conversations with people.
Well said.
I also think it's okay to be honest. If somebody really looks like disinterested, like bringing up the, hey, it was really nice to meet you. I can see that, you're probably really busy, and like not in a rude way. Like I can see that you're staring at your phone for the last 30 seconds, but like giving people an out, I think is also something that everyone needs to think about going in, because it goes back to watching your time when you're there. I honestly, my best way of looking at it is like a wedding. So you go into the wedding and you want to spend 25 minutes talking to Uncle Joe, but that's not really like, you're not really like jiving. The conversation's awkward. It's just like not fruitful from like a body language perspective of like leaning in, being engaged, being excited, answering questions with more than one word answer, like things like that. Or do you kind of want to excuse yourself and go find cousin Katie because you have more interests that are aligned and it's a fun conversation that you want to continue after the event? So it's like keeping yourself on track, but also watching other people at the exact same time. This is why networking is hard. It's
Go
like why
back
I
to
go
the
back.
badges where you could switch the color.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm no longer interested.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love, but I love what you're both pointing to, which I've experienced as well, is like, I'm always watching for those nonverbals, of course. And I'm also thinking about like, I don't know how to articulate this other than like, is the direction of the conversation worth my time? Because if it's like 3 minutes in and we're still on the nonsense BS small talk, I'm going to be like, I don't know if, I've tried to push a couple of times and it kind of continues to resurface. I'll be like, it's great to meet you. I'm going to go say hi to a friend that I see over there. And like, it's both providing that out if in case the conversation's awkward, but also just being present and aware in that conversation. I'm always paying attention to like, is this actually going anywhere? Like, is this actually fruitful? Because otherwise, to your point, Tara, you might just end up awkwardly talking with Uncle Joe for 25 minutes. And you're like, oh, well, that was a waste of my time.
Right?
I got to go find somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have an Uncle Joe, by the way. So that's just
Neither do I.
and so, Nicholas, I have a question for you.
Uh-oh.
So how would you leverage the upfront contract? Like, right? Like when you're talking with people, there's going to be an interesting way to do an upfront contract so you don't speak with Uncle Joe for 20 minutes and get caught in that trap. So how would you get yourself out of that trap without making it salesy? Like, hey, upfront contract, I've got 3 minutes. Like, hey, what's going on? I mean, I guess you could do that depending if you know the person, right? You can be upfront with them and they might get a smile. You can make a joke out of it. But like, what would you do with an upfront contract to somebody that you don't know so you don't get in that trap?
So I actually do this. So if there's anybody that knows me in Calgary, they're gonna laugh. So I'm like, we're start talking. I'm like, just so you know, I play a game called The Race to Commonality. And so what I'm gonna do is try to find something that we both love, that you get excited about, I'm excited about, and we want to keep talking about. If at some point in the next 5 to 10 minutes we do not get there, you are welcome to hit the evacuation button and just say, hey, it's not working. It's you, not me. And I won't take offense to it. But as long as you know that, we're good. You game?
The safe word.
Yeah.
The safe word.
I haven't quite taken it that far, but
what if you carried around like one of those red Staples buttons actually when you did that and people could hit it whenever they're done? I may bring that. We may do that at SaaStr. That would be fun. I love that upfront contract, by the way.
Morgan's following me around, and that was easy. You're like, go away, Morgan.
That's great. Dember, did that satisfy your upfront contracts?
I think so. I mean, it's all about how many people like you can really touch throughout a conference. And maybe Tara, like you've been to a lot of the trade shows and events. So like maybe I'll kind of pivot and ask a question of being like, how do you really protect your time? Because you have certain goals in place. You're a note taker. You like to recharge throughout the day. Like, how do you process and compartmentalize everything? Yeah, like I guess maybe I'll just like pause there.
Yeah. No, I think you have to be flexible and adapt. That's my answer. Throughout the show, and like check yourself every couple hours, yourself and then your team too. Because sometimes you go into events, you have all these expectations, right? We divide and conquer, we're a team. You have this responsibility, I do. And then you have to see how it's going. And then we have to pivot. Because a lot of the times the engagement from, say, like the show traffic, if you have a booth, if you're a sponsor, for example, isn't what you wanted it to be. So how do we make the most of this show? So you also have to do that on an individual level, where it's like, maybe I set, goals for myself to go into 2 sessions, but then I got caught over here, but I had a great lunch conversation over here, and constantly coming back to that. So again, it's like protecting your personal time. And even if you're just like, I'll be right back for 20 minutes, and you just like literally have to go outside, and you have to weigh priorities. too. It's like you went in saying like, absolutely, I want to go do this or X, but you didn't achieve something else. You're going to have to scratch things off. It's just like a work week, right? We all go in with the highest intentions and we're going to accomplish all these tasks and this project's going to be finished and we're never pushing it to the next week. But that's what happens at events as well. You stay at the happy hour too long. Then you go to the after party, and then you're like, oh, that was my personal time. I go in knowing that these days are very exhausting and they're going to be super, super long. And the only person that can make sure it's the best show is me, right? Mm-hmm. And adapting and being very honest with yourself and then your team too. It's like, hey guys, I really wanted to talk to these 5 contacts today. I only got 3. So tomorrow, instead of doing X, I would like to go talk to these other 2.
Such a good point of like realistic. I had a mentor once tell me that you could only realistically meet 3 to 5 people an hour. So if it's a networking hour or like a happy hour and you're there, like at the ones that would like pop up at lunch, 3 to 5 people's all that will remember you. So pick wisely. Do you guys think that's a fair number, or do you think it's actually higher or lower?
It could be higher or lower depending, right? Like if I'm going to block out, let's say 2 hours and I'm going to focus on, this is an individual basis, not like a marketing as a company. So Tara and I might have 2 different answers, but I'm going to be spending my time with the tier 1 folks, maybe 3 to 5. That's fair, right? But if I'm like thinking, okay, like the tier 1s are going to be the longer plays, right? Like it could take 6 months to 8 months to close a deal. Like we'll call those the home runs. What about the tier 2s? You want your doubles, and then your tier 3s, you need some singles in there. That way you're going to be able to hit your quota. You need a bucket of everything: singles, doubles, triples, and home runs, right? And so there's going to be days you can meet, 7 different people if you're going to do more of a speed. And it's like, maybe those are tier 3s, like 7 to 10. It's just really about figuring out your plan of like how you're going to back into your numbers. So if you're an individual contributor, figure out what your Q. So in this example, like you're going into Q4, what's your number for Q4 and back into it and see what that ultimately would look like for you to, like, if your average ACV is say 60K, like how are you going to get to your number? And yeah, I love the LinkedIn user saying Moneyball. That's what it is. Like, it's my favorite movie, and it's a great way to think about going into a marketing or any type of like trade show. Always back into your number.
I like that. My base has always been 3 meaningful conversations a networking hour. Like that has always been like my base goal. So from the lower end, I think that's totally fair. I think it could be more to David's goal. Like it could be, but also then it's sort of like probably not too much more, because then it's drive-by business carding and it's, real small talk conversations that don't get anywhere. And you might get the LinkedIn connection request, but then they don't remember you when you reach back out even in a week. And it's sort of that, diminishing returns the farther it goes. But my goal has always been a minimum of 3 really meaningful in an hour.
When me and Morgan go networking together, he never sits by me. So he's like, peace. And he goes as far as ways.
That's not fair. That's not fair.
He's like, bye-bye.
Well,
going to meet people.
Hey, it's a team sport. We have different ground to cover,
And to David's point, you shouldn't clump together.
Mm-hmm.
You got to span out.
Hey.
So, yeah.
I feel in the right here, Nick. Okay? I feel in the right.
Yeah. I'm not saying you were wrong. It's just fun to tease you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I agree with the number, though. As marketers, you should always be shooting for quality over quantity. Like, gone are the days that you're just at the conference to get as many leads as possible. Yeah. We don't need that anymore. We have like Zoom info and all these other technology to get that for people that don't really know you, right? It's like, that's not the goal of any of these events, is to come back with, actual human connections and people that will remember you. I think that's a number one goal for people, to be memorable. However you can achieve that, it's different by person and by brand, of course. But I think, 5 is a good ideal 5's on the high, I would think, for an hour. But to make a meaningful conversation per person is something definitely to shoot for.
That's such a good point. We have Zoom info. We don't
Yeah.
need to go and like really push numbers. It's
No.
better to be remembered because that's why we're meeting in person. And so maybe that's the question: is how can I walk into conversations and be remembered?
Well, I could start
Ooh.
on this one. This goes back to Get Accept. One of our core values is to think crazy differently. So, especially in our space, right? In SaaS, and we're in sales technology, there's hundreds and hundreds of vendors and people, especially in the US, right? So we start with our attire. So you will see us at the conferences and we will stand out, whether we want to or not. No, I'm just kidding. So we wear these crazy suits. And so it's actually Icebreaker, an opener, and I have all these different colors. And it's actually something the co-founders did at SaaStr way back when it was just the 4 of them to stand out when they didn't have the funding to actually have a booth. And so we've carried that throughout of, as Get Accept's gotten much larger and scaled and everything like that. So it's like, what even can you wear that's different, that strikes up a conversation? And I've noticed at events, people who you can kind of get their personality. We've been talking about introverts, extroverts, that they end up asking like, what's the deal with your jacket? Because it's like so different. And they're just like literally almost confused. And it brings an opener. And then we get to tell our story of thinking crazy different at Get Accept. So it like kind of leads into that. But you can do that in many different ways, right? So it doesn't have to just be your attire. It could be something that you work into your pitch, or something new, or something personal that you want to share with people. I think when you can share personally upfront and give that value first, people remember that. And that goes back to the notes. That's my thing too. It's like when you go back and you take your notes, the back of the business card or on your phone, you write like, okay, Tara mentioned her dog. He always barks on podcasts, as David knows, like things like that. So when you do your follow-up the next week, David writes that, or I, you know what I mean? So it's like you had a human connection, and that's memorable. Honestly, I don't, the marketer in me probably shouldn't say this, but like making your tech memorable, like that's marketing and branding's job. Yes, you should be doing it as an individual, but that's where your booth and all of that comes. Or if you're just like an attendee, you can talk about it as well. So
I can't wait to see these outfits now.
Yeah.
I can see it like this, like peacock.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Can't wait to see the Get Accept. I think you're going to have some pretty cool stuff going on over there. So I love what you guys do, by the way. So it's going to be awesome to seeing you out there.
Yeah, we're excited. It's a lot of events.
How about you, Dember?
What about me?
How do you
he is memorable.
He's memorable. You are memorable. No, how do you like to leave an impression? How do you like to make sure that you're memorable?
I'm just myself. I like to have fun. I'm very observant how people, hold themselves. I really listen to some of the jokes that people tell. I'm really observant in elevators. Like legitimately, my eyes are looking at different tags. So if I'm just chilling in the elevator, like my eyes are kind of like looking down at badges. I'm like, okay, like this person's at this company. Like, what jokes are they telling? How are they having fun? Like, so that way, if I'm wanting to have like a casual conversation with them, I already kind of have a sense of like what their personality's like, which gives me a competitive edge. And not to like con anybody. It's not like I'm trying to like learn how they are so I can like come in and, have that casual conversation. But yeah, like I just like to be myself, just show my charisma and just, overall just show my love and appreciation for everyone and learn as much as I can about them.
Love that. Talk about some good advice today.
What do you think? Should we go and close out with one thing? I know David had wrote it in the chat. Do we want to do one thing to not do at these events? Like if we have a reminder, it's one thing, or what is one thing we want to make sure we do? We could take a pick.
Let's do what should we do? If you had to set a reminder in your phone for every day, what would that be at these conferences?
Want to start, Morgan?
No. How about you, Nick?
I actually I reminded myself of that schedule play. I think if you could find those events that are a little bit more fun, that are not necessarily on the conference floor, that people like, whether it's playing a sport or anything, or even like Chili Piper's event with comedy. If you love comedy, go there. Now you have an easy conversation starter. So find the fun, dive in.
I would say the same. Like really understand what parties are going to be there, what communities are supporting those parties. You know, like who are going to be there. Like overall, like I think that is just so important to really understand like what's not just happening at the conference or at the event, but what's happening after. So if you need to take a nap, like after a certain point, go out a little bit later because that's where a lot of the networking is going to happen. So, yeah.
That's
Well
Tara?
said.
I would say be flexible. You can't overplan, but you got to adapt to the show, the attendees. And that being said, you need to constantly take notes, whether that's rehearsing in your brain after you walk away from somebody, so you remember it yourself, or use your phone or anything accessible, because I think the hardest thing about events is extending the life of events after. And that's where the ROI comes in, right? So you need to do your due diligence to hit the ground running when you get back. So
Well said.
Love that.
My reminder would just be to be present. I think it's so easy to get caught up in all of the noise and the excitement and everything else that these events provide, and it's incredible. But everything that we've talked about today, to come back to just being present with the people that you're actually talking to, and being observant and asking good questions and building that relationship, comes from presence. So that's what I would say. This has been an amazing Power Hour. Thank you both for coming on. I hope it has been valuable to everybody who has joined us today as well. And Nick, do you want to close us out?
Yeah, I think I might actually change it up today. Normally I would say, it's 2022. It's no longer acceptable to suffer in silence. And I'm going to go and switch that up a little bit. If you know us, if you know anybody here, come say hi. Let us know what you love about our content. Let us know that what we're doing is having an impact, because anybody, when you tell them, because we don't always comment, we don't always like everybody's posts, but sometimes being that voice saying, hey, I appreciate what you do, is one of the best compliments you can ever give. So if you see us out there and you feel that way, we would love to hear it. And we appreciate you guys joining in. It means a lot to us. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
thanks, everybody.